Abigail Thornton dropped to her knees in the snow, her frozen fingers still clutching her youngest baby against her chest. 6 other children huddled behind her, watching their mother's strength finally shatter. "Mama, please get up," 8-year-old Samuel begged, pulling at her sleeve. "Please, Mama, please." She couldn't. Her legs had stopped working 3 miles ago. Her heart had stopped hoping 4 months ago when they buried her husband in a grave she couldn't afford. "We'll sleep under the stars tonight," she whispered, the lie tasting like ash. "It'll be an adventure." If you want to know how a stranger's single decision saved this family from the cold hand of death, subscribe to our channel and follow this story until the very end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Wyoming Territory, November 1883. The temperature had dropped below zero an hour ago, and it was still falling. Caleb Mercer guided his black stallion through the early darkness, his breath forming clouds that vanished into the bitter wind. He'd sold 30 head of cattle in Copper Creek, gotten a fair price enough to last him through winter. The coins sat heavy in his saddlebag, worthless weight for a man with no one to spend them on. Then he heard the crying. Not just one voice, many. Children's voices, thin and desperate, cutting through the howling wind like broken glass. Caleb pulled his horse to a stop. His jaw tightened. He knew that sound, had heard it in his nightmares for 7 years, ever since he'd come home to find his own children's graves freshly dug. He turned toward the sound. What he saw nearly stopped his heart. A woman knelt in the snow near the abandoned mill, surrounded by children. 7 of them, ranging from a baby wrapped against her chest to a boy of maybe 8, who stood guard over his siblings with his fists clenched. Their clothes were worn through, patched and repatched until the patches needed patches. No coats thick enough for this weather. No boots meant for snow. The woman's lips were moving, but Caleb couldn't hear the words. He dismounted and walked closer, leading his horse. "And when the stars come out, we'll count them together," she was saying, her voice bright and false, trembling at every edge. "Won't that be lovely? We'll make a game of it." "Mama, I can't feel my feet," a little girl whimpered. "I know, sweetheart, I know. Just a little longer." "Mama, I'm hungry," another child said. "Tomorrow, I promise. Tomorrow we'll find something." The boy, the oldest one, turned and saw Caleb approaching. He stepped in front of his mother and siblings, raising his fists. "Stay back, mister." His voice cracked, but his stance didn't waver. "We ain't got nothing worth stealing." Caleb stopped, removed his hat. "I ain't here to steal, son." The woman's head snapped up. She struggled to stand, staggered, nearly fell. The baby in her arms let out a weak cry. "We're fine," she said quickly, the words automatic. "Just resting. We'll be moving on shortly." Caleb looked at her, really looked. Red hair escaping from beneath a threadbare shawl. Green eyes that held more steel than surrender even now. Cheekbones too sharp from months of giving her own food to her children. She was young, maybe 30, but hardship had carved years into her face. "Ma'am." He kept his voice gentle. "It's below zero and dropping. You won't survive the night out here. We've survived worse." "I doubt that." Her chin lifted. Pride flared in those green eyes, fierce and desperate. "We don't need charity, sir. We'll manage." "This ain't charity." Caleb took a step closer. The boy moved to block him, and Caleb respected that, stopping just outside arm's reach. "I've got a ranch 3 miles north. Warm house, plenty of room, food in the pantry. You and your children are welcome to shelter." "I said we're fine." "And I said you ain't." Their eyes locked. Caleb saw her weigh his words against every hard lesson life had taught her. Saw her calculate the risk of trusting a stranger against the certainty of watching her children freeze. The baby coughed a weak rattling sound that made Caleb's chest tighten. "Mama," the oldest boy said quietly, not taking his eyes off Caleb. "Rosie ain't moving no more." The woman Abigail, though Caleb didn't know her name yet, whirled around. One of the smaller children, a girl of about 5, had curled into a ball in the snow. Her eyes were closed. Her lips had turned blue. Rosie. Abigail dropped to her knees beside the child, pulling her close, rubbing her arms. Rosie, wake up. Wake up, baby. The little girl's eyes fluttered open. Mama? Cold? I know, baby. I know. Caleb moved without thinking. He shrugged off his heavy coat and wrapped it around the child and her mother both. The cold hit him like a fist, but he barely noticed. There's no more time for pride, ma'am. His voice was quiet, but firm. Your children need warmth tonight, not tomorrow, tonight. Abigail looked up at him. Tears had frozen on her cheeks. Her arms tightened around Rosie, around the baby still pressed against her chest. I can't pay you, she whispered. I have nothing. I ain't asking for payment. Then what do you want? Caleb met her eyes. To not ride past suffering I can ease, that's all. Something in her resistance cracked. Not shattered women like her didn't shatter, but cracked enough to let reality through. Just for one night, she said. Just until the children are warm. Then we'll go. However long you need. He turned to the children, counting them quickly. 7. The baby, the unconscious Rosie, the oldest boy, and 4 others ranging from about 4 to 7. All of them watching him with eyes too old for their faces. Can everyone walk? I'll carry the ones who can't. The oldest boy said, his jaw set. What's your name, son? Samuel. Samuel Thornton. Well, Samuel Thornton, tonight you don't have to carry anyone. Caleb moved to his horse, pulling blankets from his saddlebags. I've got this. He lifted Rosie first, wrapping her in his coat and settling her across his saddle. Then the next smallest, a boy of about 4, who stared at him with huge, terrified eyes. It's all right, Caleb said. The horse is gentle. Won't let you fall. Promise? The boy whispered. Something twisted in Caleb's chest. His own son had asked him that once about a different horse, a different lifetime ago. Promise. Abigail struggled to her feet, the baby in her arms, the other children clustering around her. She swayed and Caleb caught her elbow. Can you walk, ma'am? I can walk. She straightened, pulling away from his touch. I can always walk. They started north. Caleb leading his horse with its precious cargo, Abigail walking beside him, the remaining children stumbling through the snow behind them. The wind howled accusations at their backs. Samuel fell into step beside Caleb. You really got a ranch, mister? I do. With a real house and a fire. Real house, warm fire, beds with blankets. Samuel was quiet for a moment. Then so softly Caleb almost missed it. Pa promised us that, before he died, said he'd build us a house with a real fire. Caleb glanced at Abigail. Her face was turned away, but he saw her shoulders trembling. I'm sorry about your pa, son. Wasn't your fault. Samuel's voice hardened. Was Mr. Blackwell's fault. He's the one who made Pa go into that mine when Pa said it wasn't safe. When it collapsed. The boy stopped, swallowed. Mama says we shouldn't talk about it. Samuel. Abigail's voice was sharp. Enough. The boy fell silent, but his fists remained clenched at his sides. They walked in silence after that, the only sounds the crunch of snow and the children's labored breathing. Caleb's mind worked over what Samuel had said. Blackwell. The name sat in his gut like a stone. Ezra Blackwell, the banker who owned half of Copper Creek and wanted to own the other half. The man who'd been trying to buy Caleb's ranch for 3 years, the man whose offers had recently turned to threats. If Blackwell had something to do with this family's suffering. Caleb pushed the thought aside. First things first, get them warm, get them fed. The rest could wait until morning. His ranch house appeared through the swirling snow, a dark shape with no lights burning. It had looked that way for 7 years now. Cold, empty, a house that had forgotten what family meant. "There," Caleb said, pointing. "That's home." The children perked up, finding energy they didn't know they had. Even Rosie stirred, lifting her head from Caleb's coat. "A real house," she murmured. "Mama, it's a real house." "I see it, baby." Caleb got them inside, quickly lighting lamps and stoking the fire until the main room blazed with warmth. The children stood in a cluster dripping snow onto his floor, staring at the flames like they'd never seen fire before. "Sit," Caleb said. "Get warm. I'll bring food." He moved to the kitchen, pulling bread, cheese, dried meat, and apples from his stores. Behind him, he heard Abigail herding her children toward the fire, her voice soft but firm. "Take off your wet coats." "That's right." Lucy helped Thomas with his shoes. "Samuel, see to the baby." Caleb returned with food. The children's eyes went wide, and he saw them look to their mother for permission. "Eat," Abigail said. "Slowly. Don't make yourselves sick." They fell on the food like they hadn't eaten in days. Caleb suspected they hadn't. He turned to Abigail. She stood apart from her children, still holding the baby, still wearing her wet clothes, still shivering. "You need to eat too, ma'am." "After they've finished, if there's enough." "There's enough." "I'll wait." Caleb didn't argue. He recognized the stubbornness. His own mother had been the same way, always last to eat, first to go without. "At least sit by the fire." Abigail hesitated, then moved toward the warmth. She sank into a chair, the baby cradled against her chest, and for just a moment, her mask slipped. Caleb saw the exhaustion beneath the desperation, the grief that she'd been carrying alone for God knew how long. Then the mask was back, and she was watching her children eat with fierce protective love. "I meant what I said," she spoke without looking at him. "We'll leave tomorrow. We won't impose. Roads will be snowed in by morning. Then the day after." "Ma'am?" Caleb pulled a chair close and sat. "Where are you heading?" "Oregon. My sister lives there. She'll take us in." "You have stage fare." Silence answered him. "I had fare," Abigail said finally. "It was stolen. In Billings. Along with everything else we had left." "So, you've been walking." "We've been surviving." Caleb nodded slowly. "How long since your husband passed?" Abigail's jaw tightened. 8 months, though it feels longer. She paused. "The mine company said it was his fault, said he violated safety protocols. But Daniel never—" Her voice broke. She steadied it. "He never would have. He was careful. He had 7 children counting on him. He would never have taken a foolish risk. But they blamed him anyway. They blamed him so they wouldn't have to pay the families. 14 men died in that collapse, Mr. I don't even know your name." "Mercer. Caleb Mercer." "Mr. Mercer. 14 widows. 14 families left with nothing. And Ezra Blackwell, who owns that mine, didn't pay a single cent in compensation." There was that name again. Blackwell. "Tell me," Caleb said quietly. "Everything." Abigail looked at him for a long moment, measuring him the way she might measure a horse before trusting it to carry her children. "Why do you care?" "Because I've got history with Blackwell. Because I know what kind of man he is. And because—" Caleb stopped. Swallowed. "Because I couldn't save my own family. Maybe I can help save yours." Something in Abigail's eyes shifted. The wariness didn't disappear, but it made room for something else. Curiosity, maybe. Or the faintest flicker of hope. "After Daniel died," she began, "the mine company sent a man to our house. He said there were debts, loans Daniel had taken out against his wages. I didn't believe it. Daniel never borrowed money, never, but the man had papers with Daniel's signature. Forged. I don't know. Maybe. Probably. But I couldn't prove it. And before I could even try, another man came. A lawyer. He said we had 3 days to pay or we'd lose the house." 3 days? "We lost it in 2. They came with the sheriff and put us out. I had 7 children and a carpetbag. That was all." Her voice stayed steady, but her hands shook. "We've been walking ever since. 4 months. 4 months of begging for work, sleeping in barns, eating whatever scraps people would give us." Caleb's hands had curled into fists. "And no one helped. No one in 4 months. Some helped. Good people, kind people. But they were scared. Blackwell owns everything in Copper Creek. The bank, the general store, half the ranches. People who cross him tend to lose things, businesses, property, sometimes worse. So they looked the other way. They didn't have a choice." Caleb stood, walked to the window, stared out at the darkness. "Everyone has a choice, ma'am. They just don't always have the courage to make the right one." Behind him, he heard Abigail rise, heard her footsteps approach. "You sound like you're speaking from experience." He didn't turn around. "I was engaged once, long time ago. The banker's daughter, Rebecca Harris, pretty girl, good family. We were supposed to marry in the spring." He paused. "Then I did something her father didn't approve of. He called off the engagement, said I wasn't fit for his daughter." "What did you do?" "Stood between a mob and a Chinese man they wanted to beat, Mr. Chen. He ran the laundry." Caleb finally turned. "They wanted to kill him for being different. I couldn't let that happen. So I stepped in, took some punches, took some damage. Rebecca's father said a man who associated with that kind wasn't worthy of his family." "So you've been alone ever since." "I've been principled ever since. Alone was just the price." Abigail studied his face in the lamplight. "You're a strange man, Caleb Mercer. I've been called worse. I didn't say it was a bad thing." Their eyes held. Something passed between them. Not romantic, not yet, but a recognition. Two people who had chosen hard roads and refused to regret them. "Mama." They both turned. Little Rosie stood in the doorway wrapped in Caleb's coat, the hem dragging on the floor. "Can we stay here forever?" Abigail's face softened. "We'll see, sweetheart. I like it here. It's warm. And that man," Rosie pointed at Caleb, "he gave me his coat. Papa used to give me his coat when I was cold." Caleb felt something crack in his chest. He knelt to Rosie's level. "You can keep the coat tonight, little miss, and tomorrow there'll be breakfast. Real breakfast with eggs. With eggs and bacon. And maybe some biscuits if your mama helps me figure out the oven. I'm not much of a cook." Rosie's eyes went wide. She turned to her mother. "Mama, eggs." For the first time, Abigail smiled. A real smile, small but genuine, that transformed her careworn face. "We'll see about those eggs, Rosie. Now come on, time for bed." "But Mama..." "Bed, all of you." The children protested, but Abigail's voice brooked no argument. Within minutes, she had them herded upstairs, tucked into the 2 spare bedrooms that hadn't been used in 7 years. Caleb listened to their voices drifting through the floorboards, complaints, giggles shushing, and felt his empty house filling with something he'd forgotten existed. Life. When Abigail came back downstairs, she found him standing by the fire staring into the flames. "Mr. Mercer, I can't thank you enough for..." "Don't." He turned. "Don't thank me, not yet. Not until you hear what I'm going to say." She went still. "What do you mean?" Caleb took a breath. "Blackwell has been trying to buy my ranch for 3 years. This land has the best water access in the valley. He wants it. At first he offered money. Good money. I said no. Then the offers got less friendly. Hints about things that might happen to a man alone with no family, no allies. You think he'll come after you? I know he will. Eventually. Having you here, having your children here, it puts you all in the middle of something dangerous. You need to know that before you decide to stay." Abigail was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed, a short, bitter sound that held no humor. "Mr. Mercer Ezra Blackwell killed my husband, stole my home, left my children to starve. If you think I'm afraid of being in the middle of something dangerous, you don't know me at all." Caleb looked at her, saw the steel beneath the exhaustion, Saw his own mother in her all those years ago, standing between a mob and a fallen man. "Then stay," he said. "Work for room and board. Keep your dignity, but stay, at least until spring. And then we'll see." She extended her hand. Caleb took it. Her grip was firm despite her exhaustion, her skin rough from months of hardship. "You have a deal, Mr. Mercer." Caleb. She released his hand. "But I want you to understand something. I will work for everything we're given. Every bite of food, every night under this roof. I won't be beholden to anyone. Not ever again." "Understood." Abigail nodded once. Then she turned and walked toward the stairs, pausing at the bottom. "That man you saved, Mr. Chen, is he still in Copper Creek?" "He is. Runs the laundry." "Good." Her voice hardened. "Because if I'm going to take down Ezra Blackwell, I'm going to need allies. And it sounds like Mr. Chen has as much reason to hate him as I do." She disappeared upstairs, leaving Caleb alone with the fire, and the sudden startling realization that he'd just invited a war into his home. He smiled grimly. Let Blackwell come. Let the whole damn town come. For the first time in 7 years, Caleb Mercer had something worth fighting for. Outside, the snow kept falling. The temperature kept dropping. And somewhere in Copper Creek, in a mansion built on blood and broken families, Ezra Blackwell slept peacefully, unaware that his reckoning had just begun. Morning came with the smell of coffee and the sound of children's laughter. Caleb woke on the couch, disoriented. For 7 years, silence had been his only companion at dawn. Now, feet thundered across the floorboards above him. A child shrieked with delight. Another shouted something about a mouse. He sat up, rubbing his face. Real. This was real. "Mr. Mercer." Samuel stood in the kitchen doorway, already dressed, hair combed flat with water. The boy held himself like a soldier awaiting orders. "Mama says breakfast is ready. She made eggs and biscuits. She found flour in your pantry." Caleb rose, joints protesting. "She didn't have to do that." "She wanted to. Mama always says a debt repaid is a burden lifted." The kitchen had transformed overnight. Abigail stood at the stove, the baby balanced on one hip, a spatula in her free hand. The other children sat around the table, scrubbed and expectant. Rosie wore Caleb's coat like a dress, the sleeves rolled up 6 times. "Good morning, Mr. Mercer." Abigail didn't turn from the stove. "I hope you don't mind. I needed to keep busy." "I don't mind." "Sit. Eat. You'll need your strength for the day's work." Caleb sat. A plate appeared before him, piled with eggs, bacon, and biscuits, golden brown and perfect. He couldn't remember the last time someone had cooked for him. "This is—" He stopped. Swallowed. "Thank you." Abigail finally turned. Something flickered in her eyes. Gratitude, maybe? Or the ghost of who she'd been before grief had hollowed her out. "It's just breakfast." "It's more than that." Their eyes held for a moment too long. Then Rosie tugged at Caleb's sleeve. "Mr. Mercer, do you got horses? Samuel says you got horses. Can I see them? Can I pet them? Mama, can I pet his horses?" Caleb smiled despite himself. "After breakfast, little miss. I'll show you the whole ranch." The morning passed in a blur of small discoveries. Caleb learned that Lucy, the second oldest at 7, had a talent for organizing. She'd already sorted his pantry by the time he finished eating. Thomas, age 6, was afraid of everything but tried desperately to hide it. The twins Matthew and Mark, age 4, spoke in a language only they understood, and baby Grace, just 8 months old, watched everything with solemn brown eyes. "She doesn't cry much," Abigail explained when Caleb commented on the baby's quietness. She learned early that crying didn't bring food any faster. The words hit Caleb like a punch. He turned away before Abigail could see his face. By noon, he knew he couldn't put off going to town any longer. Supplies were needed. The ranch couldn't feed 8 extra mouths on what he had stored. "I'm riding into Copper Creek," he announced, pulling on his coat. Need anything specific? Abigail hesitated. I should come with you, to help carry things. No. Her chin lifted. I'm not hiding, Mr. Mercer. I ain't asking you to hide. I'm asking you to stay here where it's safe until I know how the town's going to react. He softened his voice. Please, give me 1 day to test the waters. She didn't like it, he could see that. But she was practical enough to recognize sense when she heard it. 1 day, she said. Then I'm not staying cooped up like some scandal to be hidden. Fair enough. Samuel appeared at his elbow. I'll come with you. Samuel. Abigail started. I ain't a baby mama. I can help Mr. Mercer carry things. The boy's jaw set in a way Caleb was beginning to recognize. Besides, if there's trouble, he shouldn't face it alone. Caleb looked at Abigail. She closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. Stay close to Mr. Mercer. Don't speak unless spoken to. And Samuel. She gripped his shoulders. Don't let them see you're afraid. I ain't afraid, Mama. I know, baby. I know. They rode double on Caleb's black stallion. Samuel sitting in front, his small hands gripping the saddle horn. The boy was tense as wire, but he didn't complain. You ride good, Caleb said. Your pa teach you. Some. Before he died. Samuel's voice flattened. He was going to buy me my own horse, when we had enough saved. What happened to the money? Mr. Blackwell said we owed it. Said Pa had debts we didn't know about. Samuel's hands tightened on the horn. It was lies. All of it. Pa never borrowed money. He said a man who lives on credit lives on his knees. Smart man, your pa. He was the best man in the world. Samuel's voice cracked. And they killed him. They killed him and nobody cared. Nobody did nothing. Caleb let the silence hold for a moment. Then, I care, and I'm going to do something about it. Samuel twisted to look at him. You mean it? I don't say things. I don't mean, son. The boy stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned back around and sat a little straighter in the saddle. Copper Creek appeared through the snow, a cluster of buildings huddled against the cold. Caleb felt the shift the moment they hit Main Street. Faces turned. Conversation stopped. Mrs. Patterson, who usually waved, crossed to the other side of the street without meeting his eyes. So, word had already spread. They're staring at us, Samuel whispered. Let them stare. Caleb dismounted outside the general store, lifting Samuel down after him. Mrs. T. Hutchins stood behind the counter, her face arranged in careful neutrality. Morning, Caleb. Morning, Martha. She waited, clearly expecting him to explain himself. He didn't give her the satisfaction. Instead, he handed over his supply list and began examining the bolts of fabric near the window. That's quite a list, Martha said finally. More than usual. I've got company. So I heard. Caleb turned, met her eyes directly. Something you want to say, Martha? She glanced toward Samuel, who had stationed himself by the door like a guard. Her voice dropped. People are talking, Caleb. A widow with 7 children living alone with you. It doesn't look proper. Those children were freezing to death on the roadside. I wasn't going to leave them there so folks could feel comfortable about their imaginations. I'm not saying you did wrong. Then what are you saying? Martha's lips pressed thin. I'm saying be careful. There are people in this town who won't look kindly on this. Powerful people. Blackwell, you mean? She flinched at the name. Just be careful. Caleb paid for his supplies without another word. He was loading them into saddlebags when a shadow fell across his path. Well, well. Caleb Mercer. He turned. Victor Crane stood 3 feet away, flanked by 2 men Caleb didn't recognize. Crane was Blackwell's foreman, his attack dog more like. A big man with small eyes and hands that had done ugly things. Victor. Heard you picked up some strays. Crane's gaze slid to Samuel. That one of them Thornton's boy, ain't it? Samuel's chin lifted, his fists clenched at his sides. "We don't want trouble," Caleb said, his voice steady. "Then you shouldn't have brought it home." Crane stepped closer. "Mr. Blackwell's curious why you're taking in the widow of a man who died owing him money. Thinks maybe she's trying to avoid paying what's owed." "Daniel Thornton didn't owe anyone anything." Crane smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "That ain't what the papers say, and Mr. Blackwell's got the papers. Papers can be forged." The smile disappeared. "Careful, Mercer. That sounds like an accusation." "It's a fact." Crane's hand dropped to his belt. Caleb's dropped to his own. The two men behind Crane spread out, slightly flanking. "Mr. Mercer." Samuel's voice was quiet, but it cut through the tension. Both men glanced at him. "My pa didn't borrow nothing from nobody, and anybody who says different is a liar." Crane laughed. "Boy's got some grit. Wonder if he'll keep it when his mama's thrown out in the snow again." Caleb moved before he could think. One step forward, hand closing on Crane's collar, driving him back against the hitching post. "Threaten that boy or his mother again," Caleb said very quietly, "and I'll forget I'm a civilized man." Crane's eyes went wide, then narrow. His hand clawed at Caleb's wrist. "You're making a mistake, Mercer. A big one." "Wouldn't be my first." Caleb released him. Crane stumbled, caught himself, straightened his coat, with shaking hands. His face had gone red with humiliation. "Mr. Blackwell will hear about this. Give him my regards." Crane spat in the dirt at Caleb's feet. Then he turned and stalked away, his men following. Samuel hadn't moved from his post by the door. His face was pale, but his eyes burned. "You shouldn't have done that," the boy said. "Now they'll come for you." They were going to come anyway. Caleb gathered the reins. Might as well give them a reason. They rode home in silence. Caleb's mind worked over the confrontation, analyzing planning. Blackwell wouldn't let this stand. The question was how he'd retaliate and when. Abigail met them on the porch. One look at their faces told her everything. What happened? Nothing that wasn't expected. Caleb dismounted, helped Samuel down. "Town knows you're here. Blackwell's people know too." "They threatened him," Samuel burst out. "That man Crane, he said they'd throw us out in the snow again. And Mr. Mercer grabbed him and—" "Samuel." Caleb's voice was firm. "Go inside. Help your sisters with the unpacking." The boy hesitated, then obeyed. When he was gone, Abigail turned to Caleb. "Tell me." He told her. Everything. Crane's words, the threat, his response. She listened without interrupting, her face growing colder with every sentence. "I should leave," she said when he finished. "Tonight, before this gets worse." "Where would you go?" "I don't know. Somewhere. Anywhere." "In winter with 7 children." Caleb shook his head. "You'd be dead before you reached the next town." "Better us dead than you." "That's not how this works." He caught her arm as she turned away. "Listen to me. Blackwell's been after my land for years. He was going to come for me eventually, with or without you. You being here does not change anything, except that now I've got something to fight for." Abigail's eyes searched his face. "Why? Why do you care what happens to us?" Caleb released her arm, stepped back, stared at the snow-covered ground. "I had a family once," he said. "Wife, 2 children. They died while I was away selling cattle. Fever took them one by one. By the time I got home—" He stopped, breathed. "I couldn't save them. I wasn't there. And I've spent every day since wondering why I'm still alive when they're not." Abigail was silent. "When I found you on that roadside," Caleb continued, "I saw a chance to do what I couldn't do before, to save someone, to matter." He looked up. "Don't take that from me." She stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "All right, we stay, but on one condition." "Name it." "We fight together. Whatever comes, we face it together. I won't be protected like some China doll. I won't. Her voice broke. She steadied it. I won't be useless again. You were never useless. I watched my husband die. I watched my home taken. I couldn't stop any of it. Her eyes hardened. Never again. Whatever it takes, never again. Caleb extended his hand. She took it. Partners, he said. Partners. That night, after the children were asleep, Abigail brought a bundle of papers to the kitchen table. Daniel's things, she explained. I saved what I could. Letters, documents, some notes he made about the mine. Caleb spread them out, squinting in the lamplight. Most of it was mundane receipts, letters from family inventory lists. But near the bottom, he found a small leather journal. What's this? His work journal. He kept notes on everything. I haven't been able to read it. Every time I try, She stopped, swallowed. Caleb opened the journal carefully. Daniel Thornton's handwriting was cramped but legible. Pages and pages of observations about the mine or quality tunnel conditions, equipment, problems. Then he found it. October 3rd, 1883. Told Crane the east tunnel supports were failing. He said Blackwell wanted production increased, not decreased. Said if I didn't like it, I could find another job. October 10th. Supports in East Tunnel cracked today. I pulled the men out myself. Crane was furious. Said I was costing the company money. I said I wouldn't send men to their deaths. October 15th. Blackwell himself came to the mine. Never seen him down there before. Told me the East Tunnel would be worked by end of week or I'd be replaced. Told him I'd go to the authorities. He laughed. Said he was the authorities. October 18th. Last entry. Tomorrow we go back into East Tunnel. I've written letters to the territorial governor and the railroad commission. If anything happens, someone needs to know the truth. October 19th, 1883. The day the tunnel collapsed. The day 14 men died. Caleb looked up. Abigail's face had gone white. He knew, she whispered. He knew it wasn't safe, and they made him go in anyway. This is evidence. Caleb's voice was rough. This proves Blackwell knew the tunnel was dangerous. This could bring him down. Who would believe it? He owns the sheriff. He owns the judge. He probably owns the governor for all I know. Not everyone. There have to be people outside his reach. Railroad commissioners. Federal authorities. And how would we get to them? We're trapped here by winter, surrounded by his men. Caleb closed the journal, slid it back to her. We wait. We plan. And when spring comes, we take this evidence to someone who'll listen. And if Blackwell comes for us before then we fight. Abigail picked up the journal, held it against her chest like a weapon. My husband died for this, she said quietly. Died trying to protect his men. Died because he wouldn't be silent. She looked at Caleb. I won't let his death mean nothing. It won't, I promise. The next morning brought the first wave. Not Blackwell's men, not yet. Something subtler, more insidious. A delegation from the Ladies' Christian Aid Society arrived just after breakfast. 5 women in their Sunday best, their faces arranged in expressions of pious concern. Mr. Mercer. Mrs. Patterson stepped forward, clutching her Bible like a shield. We've come about the woman. Abigail stood behind Caleb, the baby in her arms. Her face was blank, but Caleb could feel her tension. Mrs. Brennan is a guest in my home, he said. That's precisely the problem. Mrs. Patterson's voice dripped with false sympathy. A single man, a widow living under one roof. Surely you see how improper this appears. For her sake, if not your own. For my sake. Abigail stepped forward. Is that what you call it? When my children were freezing in the snow, where was your society? Where was your Christian aid? Mrs. Patterson's face tightened. Mrs. Brennan, there are protocols, proper channels. Protocols. Abigail's voice rose. My 5-year-old daughter nearly died. My baby has a cough that won't stop. My children hadn't eaten in 3 days. And you want to talk to me about protocols? Please calm yourself. I will not calm myself. Abigail thrust the baby toward Caleb, who took her automatically. She advanced on Mrs. Patterson, and the woman actually stepped back. Where was your charity when Blackwell's men threw us out of our home? Where was your concern when we walked 4 months through cold and hunger? That's not... My husband is dead. Dead because Ezra Blackwell forced him into a mine he knew was unsafe. And now you come to my door with your Bibles and your proper concerns, telling me that the one man who showed my children mercy is somehow wrong to do so. Silence. The delegation shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Brennan. Mrs. Patterson's voice had lost its honey. Perhaps you should consider what your behavior is doing to your children's reputation. What kind of mother... Get out! The words came from Caleb, low, dangerous. Mrs. Patterson turned to him, startled. I said get out. All of you, now. Mr. Mercer. You heard him. Samuel appeared in the doorway, his small body rigid with fury. Get out of our house. One by one the women retreated. Mrs. Patterson was last, pausing at the threshold. You'll regret this, she said. Both of you. You'll see how quickly this town can turn against those who flout its standards. Ma'am, Caleb said quietly, this town turned against a widow with 7 children. Against a woman who lost everything through no fault of her own. Any town that can do that ain't worth worrying about. He closed the door in her face. Abigail stood in the middle of the kitchen, shaking. Her hands trembled at her sides. Her breath came fast. I shouldn't have... She pressed her palms to her face. I made things worse. I always make things worse. You told the truth. The truth doesn't matter to people like that. It matters to me. Caleb put a hand on her shoulder. And it mattered to your husband. That's enough. She lowered her hands. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. This woman didn't break. She bent, but she never broke. They'll go straight to Blackwell, she said. Tell him what I said about the mine. Probably. He'll come for us. Let him. Abigail looked at him, really looked like she was seeing him for the first time. You're not afraid of anything, are you? Caleb thought of empty graves of silence that stretched 7 years of riding home to find his family already cold. I'm afraid of plenty, he said. I just don't let it stop me. The afternoon brought Samuel to Caleb's side in the barn where he was mending harness. Mr. Mercer. Yeah. Are you going to marry my mama? Caleb's hands stopped moving. He looked at the boy carefully. Why do you ask that? Those ladies said it was improper, living together without being married. Samuel's face was earnest, worried. If you married her, would they leave us alone? Samuel, marriage isn't something you do to make people stop talking. I know that. The boy's jaw set. But you like her, don't you? I can tell. And she likes you. She smiles when you're around. She hasn't smiled in months. Caleb set down the harness. Your pa just died 8 months ago. It's too soon for your mama to think about things like that. Pa would want her to be happy. Samuel's voice was fierce. He told me once before he went to the mine that day, he told me if anything happened to him, I should take care of Mama. Make sure she didn't spend her life sad. You're 8 years old, Samuel. That's too much weight for a boy to carry. I ain't a boy, not no more. Caleb looked at this child who had grown up too fast, who stood guard over his family with nothing but courage and love. And he saw himself at 12, standing over his mother's broken body, after she collapsed from exhaustion, swearing he would never let anyone he loved suffer alone again. Your pa would be proud of you, Caleb said quietly. Samuel's face crumpled just for a moment. Then he pulled it back together, the mask of maturity sliding into place. Will you think about it? He asked. About Mama? I'll think about it. The boy nodded once, Then he turned and walked out of the barn, shoulders squared, carrying his father's legacy like a stone. That night, Caleb sat on the porch despite the cold. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent and beautiful. Inside, he heard Abigail singing the children to sleep, a lullaby soft and sad, the same one his wife used to sing. He closed his eyes, remembered. The door opened. Footsteps approached. "You'll freeze out here." Abigail sat down beside him, wrapped in a blanket. Her breath misted in the cold. "Couldn't sleep," he said. "Me neither." They sat in silence, watching the stars. "Samuel asked me something today," Caleb said finally. "I know, he told me." Abigail's voice was quiet. "I told him it wasn't his place to ask such things. He loves you, wants to protect you. He's too young to carry that burden." That's what I told him. More silence. Then Abigail spoke again. "My husband was a good man, the best man I ever knew until—" She stopped. Until I met you." Caleb turned to look at her. She kept her eyes on the stars. "Daniel would have liked you," she continued. "He always said you could tell a man's character by what he did when no one was watching, by how he treated those who couldn't give him anything in return." She finally met his eyes. "You passed that test the night you found us." "I just did what anyone would do." "No, you did what you would do. That's not the same thing." She reached out her hand, finding his in the darkness. "Whatever happens next, I want you to know that. Whatever Blackwell does, whatever the town says, you gave my children hope. You gave me hope, and I won't forget that." Caleb's throat tightened. He squeezed her hand. "We'll get through this," he said. "Together. Together." They sat that way until the cold drove them inside. And for the first time in 7 years, Caleb didn't feel alone. But as he lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, he heard horses, distant, coming closer, then stopping. He rose, moved to the window. In the moonlight, he could see 3 riders on the ridge overlooking his ranch. Watching. They stayed for an hour, then they turned and rode away. The siege had begun. 3 days the riders came. Every night, different men, same message. "We're watching. We're waiting. We know you're there." Caleb stopped sleeping. He sat by the window with his rifle across his knees, counting shadows, listening for hoofbeats. Abigail pretended not to notice, but he caught her checking the locks twice, 3 times before bed. On the 4th morning, Samuel found the carcass. "Mr. Mercer!" The boy's scream brought Caleb running. He found Samuel behind the barn, frozen in place, staring at the ground. One of the milk cows lay in the snow, throat cut, blood frozen in a black pool around her. "Don't look." Caleb pulled Samuel back. "Go inside." "Who did this?" "Go inside, Samuel, now." The boy ran. Caleb stood over the dead animal, his hands shaking. Not from cold, from rage. A note was pinned to the cow's hide. He pulled it free. "Next time it won't be cattle." Abigail appeared at his shoulder. He heard her sharp intake of breath. "The children, they won't see this." Caleb crumpled the note. "I'll bury her before they wake." "Caleb." Her hand gripped his arm. "This is my fault. If I hadn't—" "Don't." He turned to face her. "This is Blackwell's fault. His and no one else's." "But if I leave—" "You think he'll stop if you leave? You think a man who kills cattle and threatens children will just let you walk away?" Caleb's voice was harsh. "You have evidence that could destroy him. He'll hunt you to the ends of the earth." Abigail's face went pale. "Then what do? We fight." "How he owns everything, everyone." "Not everyone." Caleb looked toward town. "Not Mei Chen." They rode to the laundry that afternoon, leaving Samuel in charge of the children with strict instructions to bar the doors and windows. Caleb hated leaving them, but he needed allies, needed information. Mei Chen met them at the back door, her face creased with worry. "Mr. Mercer, You should not be here. Blackwell's men watch my shop. I know. I'm sorry, May, but I need your help. She ushered them inside quickly through the steam and soap smell to a small back room. Her husband's photograph watched from the wall, Mr. Chen dead, these 5 years from a fever that took him slow. What do you need? Caleb told her. About Abigail, about the journal, about Blackwell's threats. May listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment. Daniel Thornton was good man, she said finally. When other miners called my husband names, Daniel stopped them, told them decent folk don't treat people that way. She looked at Abigail. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you. Abigail's voice was tight. But what you ask is dangerous. Blackwell has long arms, long memory. I know. You know, but do you understand? May leaned forward. 3 years ago, a man named Patterson tried to run against Blackwell's judge. Next week, his store burned down. Accident, they said. Month later, his wife took sick. Died before spring. May. I am not finished. Her eyes were hard. 2 years ago, a reporter from Territorial newspaper came asking questions about the mine. He left town in a box. Horse threw him, they said. Very tragic. Abigail's hand found Caleb's under the table. I tell you this, May continued, not to scare you. I tell you because you must understand what you fight. Blackwell does not play by rules. He makes rules. He breaks rules. He is rules. Then help us break him. May studied Caleb's face for a long moment. Then she sighed. There is a man. Deputy Jesse Cole. Young. Still has, how you say, conscience. I've seen him around. He was there. At the mine. After collapse. He helped pull out the bodies. May's voice dropped. I heard him talking to bartender one night. He was drunk, crying. Said he saw things. Things that didn't match official story. What kind of things? He did not say, but he keeps notebook. Writes everything down. Maybe. She spread her hands. Where can I find him? He drinks at the Silver Dollar. Every night after his shift. Alone. Caleb squeezed May's hand. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. Her face was grim. Thank me if you survive. That night, Caleb rode into town alone. Abigail had wanted to come, but he'd refused. If this went wrong, someone needed to be with the children. The Silver Dollar was half empty on a Wednesday night. Caleb spotted Jesse Cole immediately, a young man in a deputy's coat hunched over a whiskey at the far end of the bar. Caleb sat down beside him. Deputy? Cole looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed, haunted. Mercer, heard about you. Good things, I hope. Nothing about you is good according to the sheriff. Cole took a long drink. You're harboring a vagrant, inciting disorder, being a general pain in Blackwell's ass. Guilty on all counts. Cole almost smiled. Almost. What do you want, the truth? The deputy went still. His hand tightened on his glass. About what? About what really happened at the mine, the day it collapsed. Cole's face closed like a door slamming shut. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. Caleb kept his voice low. I think you've been carrying something heavy for a long time. Something that keeps you up at night. Something that brings you here every evening to drink alone. You don't know anything about me. I know that look in your eyes. I've seen it in the mirror. Caleb leaned closer. 14 men died that day. One of them was Daniel Thornton. He left behind a widow and 7 children. They're living with me now. Blackwell's threatening them, threatening me. And the only way to stop him is to prove what he did. Cole's hand was shaking now. Whiskey sloshed in his glass. I can't help you. Can't or won't. Both. Cole finally looked at him directly. You think I haven't thought about this? Every damn night I think about it. But Blackwell owns this town. He owns the sheriff. He probably owns the territorial governor. What am I supposed to do? One deputy against all that? Tell me what you saw. And then what? They'll kill me. They'll kill you. They'll kill that widow and her 7 kids. Cole's voice cracked. Better to stay quiet. Better to drink and forget. Is it? Caleb grabbed his arm. Is it better, deputy? Because from where I'm sitting it looks like you're dying anyway. Just slower. Cole stared at him. Something moved behind his eyes. Fear, yes, but something else too. Something that looked like hope. The supports, he said, barely a whisper. In the east tunnel. They weren't just weak. They'd been stripped. Someone had taken the good lumber and replaced it with rotted wood to cut costs. Can you prove it? I took pictures. Cole's voice was barely audible. With a camera I borrowed from the newspaper office, before they sealed the tunnel, I took pictures of everything. Caleb's heart hammered. Where are they? Hidden. Safe place. But it doesn't matter. A deputy's photos against Blackwell's lawyers, they'd tear me apart. Not just a deputy. Caleb pulled Daniel's journal from inside his coat. A deputy and a dead man's testimony. Cole looked at the journal. His hands trembled as he took it as he flipped through the pages. My God, he breathed. He wrote it all down. Everything. Names, dates, warnings ignored. Blackwell's own words. This is enough. Cole's eyes were wide now, alive for the first time since Caleb had sat down. Combined with the photographs, this is enough. Enough for what? Federal investigation. There's a territorial marshal in Helena. He's been trying to build a case against Blackwell for years. Corruption, bribery, but he could never make anything stick. Cole gripped the journal like a lifeline. This could change everything. How do we get it to him? Cole opened his mouth to answer. Then his face went pale. Don't turn around, he whispered. Victor Crane just walked in. Caleb's muscles tensed. He kept his eyes on his drink. How many with him? 2, no 3. They're coming this way. Give me the journal, slowly. Cole slid it across the bar. Caleb tucked it back inside his coat. Well, well. Crane's voice came from directly behind them. Deputy Cole and Mr. Mercer. Strange company you're keeping these days, Jesse. Cole turned slowly. His hand was nowhere near his gun. Victor, just having a drink. Sure you were. Crane's eyes moved to Caleb. Mr. Blackwell would like a word with you, Mercer, about the woman staying at your ranch. Tell Mr. Blackwell he can go to hell. The bar went silent. Every eye turned toward them. Crane smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Wrong answer. He moved fast. Caleb moved faster. He was off the stool and swinging before Crane's fist got halfway to his face. His knuckles connected with Crane's jaw sent him staggering back into his men. Chairs scraped. Someone shouted. Cole grabbed Caleb's arm. Back door. Now. They ran. The alley was dark, the snow deep. Caleb heard pursuit behind them, boots pounding, voices cursing. Cole pulled him around a corner through a gap between buildings barely wide enough for a man. This way. My horse is at the edge of town. You can't go home. They'll be waiting. I know. Cole's voice was grim. I'm going to Helena. Tonight. I'll take the journal, the photographs, everything. Alone? They'll hunt you down. Maybe, maybe not. If I ride fast enough, I can make it before they realize I'm gone. They reached the edge of town. Cole's horse was tied to a fence post already saddled. The journal. Cole held out his hand. I'll guard it with my life. Caleb hesitated. Everything depended on this. The journal was the only proof they had, but sometimes you had to trust. He handed it over. There's a photograph inside the front cover, he said. Daniel Thornton with his family. Get it to his widow if anything happens to me. Cole nodded. And if anything happens to me, then I'll finish what you started. The deputy swung into the saddle. For a moment, he looked down at Caleb, and he wasn't a drunk or a coward or a man running from his guilt. He was a man finally doing what he should have done long ago. "I'm sorry," he said, "for waiting so long. Just don't wait any longer." Cole kicked his horse and disappeared into the darkness. Caleb ran for his own horse. He had to get home. If Crane couldn't find him in town, he'd go to the ranch, to Abigail, to the children. He rode hard, faster than was safe in the dark, over ground slick with ice. His horse stumbled twice, nearly throwing him, but he pushed on. Then he saw the glow, orange light against the black sky, coming from the direction of his ranch. "No!" He kicked his horse harder. The glow grew brighter, closer. His barn was burning. Flames roared from the roof, sending sparks spiraling into the night. The horses were screaming. He could hear them even over the fire's roar. Screaming and dying. "Abigail!" He threw himself off his horse before it fully stopped stumbling through the snow toward the house. It stood dark and silent. No flames yet, but for how long? The front door burst open. Abigail ran out, Grace in her arms, the other children streaming behind her. "Caleb." He caught her, held her, felt her trembling against him. "Are you hurt? Are the children hurt?" "We're fine. We're fine. They set the barn on fire, but they didn't come to the house." Her voice shook. "The horses. Caleb, the horses." He looked at the barn. The flames had reached the roof now. Nothing could survive in there. "Stay here." "Caleb, no." He was already running. The heat hit him like a wall. He could barely breathe, barely see. But the screaming God, the screaming. He found the side door, kicked it in. Smoke billowed out. He dropped low, crawling through the hell. 2 horses were already down, still burning. The third, his black stallion, the one he'd raised from a foal, was trapped in a corner, eyes rolling with terror. "Easy, boy. Easy." His hands found the rope, untied it. The horse reared, nearly trampling him. He grabbed the halter, forced the animal toward the door. They burst out together, both of them on fire. Caleb threw himself into the snow, rolling, extinguishing the flames on his coat. The horse ran, trailing smoke, and collapsed in the yard. "Caleb!" Abigail was beside him, beating at his smoking clothes. "You idiot! You fool! You could have died." "Had to try." "The horse isn't worth your life. Nothing's worth that much, but I had to try anyway." He sat up, coughing every breath, agony. The barn was fully engulfed now, lighting the night like a second sun. Samuel stood nearby, his arm around Rosie, watching the flames with hatred in his young eyes. "They did this," he said. "Blackwell's men." "I know. What are we going to do?" Caleb looked at the burning barn, at his dead horses, at everything he'd built over 10 years going up in smoke. "We're going to make them pay." Morning found them huddled in the house, exhausted, covered in soot. The barn was gone, nothing left but smoking ruins. 2 horses dead, 1 barely alive. 10 years of work destroyed in a single night. But they were alive, all of them. Doc Wallace arrived just after dawn, his medical bag clutched in his hands. He'd seen the fire from town, he said, had come as fast as he could. "Let me look at those burns." He pushed Caleb into a chair. "You're lucky to be alive." "Lucky seems like a strong word." Wallace cleaned and bandaged his hands, his arms the patches on his back where burning embers had gotten through his coat. The pain was considerable, but Caleb barely felt it. He was too angry. "This is retaliation," Wallace said quietly, "for Cole leaving town." Caleb looked up sharply. "You know about that. Everyone knows. Crane's been tearing the town apart looking for him." Wallace's voice dropped. "Blackwell is furious. Word is he's offering $1,000 to anyone who brings Cole back, dead or alive." "Then we have to hope Cole rides fast." "Caleb." Wallace hesitated. There's something else. Something I should have told you days ago. What? The doctor pulled a small leather book from inside his coat. Daniel Thornton wasn't the only one who kept records. The company doctor, he was my friend. He documented everything. Every injury. Every death. Every corner that was cut. Where is he now? Dead. Same fever that took Mr. Chen. Wallace's face was grim. I don't believe it was natural, but I can't prove it. And this? He gave it to me before he died, made me promise to keep it safe until someone brave enough came along to use it. Caleb took the book. Inside were pages and pages of medical notes. Injuries that should have been reported but weren't. Safety violations that were covered up. A pattern of negligence that stretched back years. This is evidence. Corroborating evidence. Wallace met his eyes. Combined with Thornton's journal and Cole's photographs, it should be enough to convict Blackwell of criminal negligence at the very least. Why didn't you come forward before? Fear, same as everyone else. Wallace's voice was bitter. I told myself I was waiting for the right moment, the right person, but really I was just scared. You're here now. Yes. The doctor straightened. And I'm willing to testify, if it comes to that. Abigail had been listening from the doorway. She stepped forward now. Dr. Wallace, how many others are there? People who know the truth but have been too afraid to speak. Wallace considered. A dozen, maybe more. Miners who survived the collapse. Widows who asked too many questions. Businessmen who've been squeezed by Blackwell's monopoly. Could you find them? Talk to them? I could try? Then try. Abigail's voice was fierce. We can't fight this alone. But together, maybe we have a chance. The afternoon brought two visitors. The first was Mei Chen, slipping in through the back door with a basket of food. I heard about the fire, she said, setting the basket on the table. Whole town heard. Some people say you deserved it. Others, she smiled grimly. Others are starting to talk differently. What do you mean? Blackwell pushed too far. Burning a man's barn while children sleep in the house, even his supporters are uneasy. Nobody likes a man who threatens children. Will that translate to help? Maybe. Give it time. The second visitor was less welcome. Ezra Blackwell himself. He arrived in a black carriage pulled by matched horses flanked by 4 armed men. Caleb met him on the porch, rifle in hand. Mr. Mercer? Blackwell didn't get out of the carriage. He simply lowered the window and smiled. I came to offer my condolences. A terrible accident, your barn burning like that. It was no accident. No. How unfortunate. Perhaps you left a lamp burning. These things happen. What do you want, Blackwell? The smile faded. I want the Thornton woman off your land. I want her gone by tomorrow. And I want any documents or journals that belong to her husband. And if I refuse? Blackwell's eyes moved past Caleb to the window where small faces peered out. 7 children, he said softly. Such a responsibility. So easy for accidents to happen to children. Falls, illnesses, fires. Caleb's finger tightened on the trigger. If you touch one hair on their heads, I won't have to. You'll do the right thing, Mr. Mercer. You'll send that woman away with her brats, and this will all end peacefully. Blackwell smiled again. Or you'll dig 7 small graves come spring. The choice is yours. The carriage pulled away. Caleb stood on the porch shaking with rage, watching until it disappeared. Abigail's hand touched his arm. What did he say? Caleb couldn't answer. Couldn't repeat those words. Not to her. Not ever. Caleb. What did he say? He turned to face her. Her eyes were clear, steady, unafraid. This woman who had walked through hell and kept walking. He threatened the children. Her face didn't change. But something shifted behind her eyes, something dark and dangerous. Then we have to end this. How Cole might not even make it to Helena. And even if he does, the marshal could take weeks to act. Then we force Blackwell's hand. Abigail's voice was cold. We make him do something so public, so undeniable, that even his bought and paid for friends can't protect him. What are you thinking? A town meeting, tomorrow, in the church. We tell everyone what he's done, the mine, the forged debts, the threats, everything, in front of the whole town. He'll never allow it. He won't be able to stop it, not without proving everything we're saying about him. Caleb stared at her. You're talking about walking into the lion's den. I'm talking about dragging the lion into the light where everyone can see what he really is. He could kill us, right there in front of everyone. Abigail met his eyes. Then we die telling the truth, and our deaths become the evidence that convicts him. Silence stretched between them. You'd risk your life, your children's lives. My children don't have lives while Blackwell draws breath. Her voice cracked for the first time. I watched my husband go into that mine, knowing it wasn't safe. I watched him choose his men over his own survival, and I've spent 8 months wondering if I could ever be that brave. She stepped closer. I think I finally have my answer. Caleb looked at this woman, this incredible, terrifying, magnificent woman, and felt something break open in his chest. Together then, he said. Together. He pulled her into his arms. She came willingly, pressing against him, trembling, but not from fear. They stood that way for a long moment, while the fire-scorched smell of his ruined barn drifted on the wind. Whatever happens tomorrow, she whispered, I want you to know something. What? You gave me back my faith. In men. In goodness. In the possibility that the world isn't just cruelty and loss. She pulled back to look at him. Whatever happens, that's worth dying for. Let's try living for it instead. She almost smiled. That would be nice too. That night, the riders came again. But this time, Caleb was waiting. He fired once. Into the air, not at them. Just a warning. Tell Blackwell I'll see him tomorrow, he shouted into the darkness. In church in front of everyone. The riders wheeled and galloped away. Caleb lowered his rifle. That was either very brave or very stupid, Abigail said from behind him. Probably both. Story of your life. Story of ours now. She stood beside him, watching the darkness where the riders had disappeared. Do you think we can win? I don't know. Caleb took her hand. But I know we have to try. For Daniel. For the other miners. For your children. For everyone Blackwell has ever crushed under his heel. And for us? Yeah. He squeezed her hand. For us too. They went inside together and prayed that tomorrow would bring justice. The church bells rang at noon. Caleb had never heard them sound so much like a death knell. You don't have to do this. Doc Wallace stood beside the wagon, his face gray with worry. There's still time to ride out. Take the children and go. And let him win. Abigail climbed into the wagon seat, her jaw set like iron. Never. Caleb lifted the children one by one, settling them in the back. Samuel sat rigid, protective arms around his younger siblings. Rosie clutched her corn-husk doll. Baby Grace slept oblivious to the storm gathering around her. Stay close to the wagon, Caleb told Samuel. No matter what happens in there, you keep your brothers and sisters safe. Yes, sir. Mei Chen appeared from the side of the house, pressing a bundle into Abigail's hands. For the children. In case. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't have to. They rode toward town in silence. Caleb's hands were steady on the reins, but his heart pounded against his ribs. He'd faced angry mobs before, faced down men who wanted him dead. But he'd never had so much to lose. Caleb. Abigail's voice was quiet. Yeah. Whatever happens today, I need you to promise me something. Name it. If things go wrong, get the children out. Don't wait for me. Don't look back. Just get them to safety. Abigail, promise me. He looked at her, saw the fear she was hiding behind that fierce mask, saw the mother who would sacrifice everything for her children. "I promise." She nodded once, turned back to face the road ahead. Copper Creek was waiting. The street was packed. More people than Caleb had ever seen gathered in one place. They lined the boardwalks, clustered in doorways, pressed against windows. Word had spread. Everyone knew something was coming. Caleb pulled the wagon up in front of the church. The crowd parted around them, silent watching. Victor Crane stood at the church steps flanked by 6 armed men. "Turn around, Mercer. This meeting ain't happening." "Step aside, Crane." "Can't do that." Caleb climbed down from the wagon, walked forward until he was face to face with Blackwell's enforcer. "These people have a right to hear the truth." "There ain't no truth here, just a crazy widow and a fool rancher who don't know when to quit." "Then let them decide for themselves." A murmur ran through the crowd. People shifted, exchanged glances. Caleb could feel the tension building, could see it in the way men's hands moved toward their guns. "Let them pass." The voice came from behind Crane. Everyone turned. Reverend Shaw stood in the church doorway, his Bible clutched to his chest. "This is a house of God, Victor. You don't have authority here." Crane's face darkened. "Reverend, you don't want to do this. Mr. Blackwell won't be pleased." "I answer to a higher power than Ezra Blackwell." Shaw stepped forward. "Now step aside. These people have come to speak their piece and they'll be heard." For a long moment nobody moved. Then Crane spat in the snow and jerked his head at his men. "Fine, but Mr. Blackwell will hear about this." "I'm counting on it." The crowd flowed into the church, filling every pew. Caleb helped Abigail down from the wagon, then lifted the children. Samuel stayed close, his eyes moving constantly, watching for threats. "Stay with Mrs. Chen," Caleb told him, pointing to where May had found a seat near the back. "Keep the little ones quiet." "I want to be up there with you." "I know, but I need you here. Protecting your family. That's the most important job there is." Samuel's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Caleb took Abigail's hand and walked to the front of the church. 100 pairs of eyes followed them, some hostile, some curious, some afraid. Reverend Shaw gestured toward the pulpit. "Mrs. Brennan, the floor is yours." Abigail climbed the 2 small steps, turned to face the crowd. Her hands were trembling, but her voice was strong. "Most of you know who I am. I'm Abigail Thornton, widow of Daniel Thornton, who died in the Copper Creek mine collapse 8 months ago." Whispers rippled through the congregation. "What most of you don't know is why he died." "He was careless," someone shouted from the back. "Violated safety rules. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows what they were told." Abigail's eyes found the speaker, a man in miner's clothes, his face half hidden by shadow. But what they were told was a lie. The whispers grew louder. "My husband kept a journal. He wrote down everything, every warning he gave about the East Tunnel, every time management ignored him, every order that forced men into danger." Her voice hardened. 3 days before the collapse, Ezra Blackwell himself came to the mine. He told my husband that if he didn't send men into that tunnel, he'd be replaced. My husband wrote it all down. Names, dates, exact words. "Where's this journal?" another voice demanded. "Anybody can claim anything." "The journal is on its way to the Territorial Marshal in Helena, along with photographs taken by Deputy Cole, showing that the tunnel supports were deliberately weakened to cut costs." Chaos erupted, people shouting, standing, pushing toward the front. Crane's men started moving through the crowd. "Lies," Crane bellowed. "She's got no proof of nothing." "I have proof." Everyone turned. Doc Wallace stood up from his pew, a leather book in his hands. "Thomas Hartley was the company doctor, my friend. Before he died, he gave me his records. Every injury covered up, every death dismissed as accident. Every safety violation ignored. He walked forward, holding up the book like a weapon. 14 men died in that collapse. 14 families destroyed. And Ezra Blackwell knew those tunnels weren't safe. He sent those men to their deaths to save money. The crowd's mood shifted. Caleb could feel it, the anger that had been directed at him and Abigail now finding a new target. This is ridiculous. A new voice cut through the noise. Cold. Commanding. Ezra Blackwell walked down the center aisle, his black coat immaculate, his silver cane clicking on the wooden floor. The crowd parted before him like water. Mrs. Thornton's husband died because he was incompetent. The company investigation proved that conclusively. Blackwell stopped at the front of the church, turning to face the congregation. This woman is simply looking for someone to blame for her husband's failures. Then explain the journal. Abigail's voice didn't waver. Explain why my husband wrote that you personally ordered him into that tunnel. A dead man's delusions, written by a woman desperate for sympathy. And the photographs? What photographs? From a deputy who's fled town to avoid his debts. Blackwell smiled. I'm afraid you'll have to do better than that, Mrs. Thornton. I can do better. A woman's voice from the crowd. Everyone turned. Sarah Patterson stood up, the widow whose husband had tried to run against Blackwell's judge. The woman whose husband had died in a suspicious fire. My husband knew about the mine. He was going to expose everything during his campaign. 2 weeks later, our store burned down. A month after that, he was dead. Her voice shook, but she kept going. Everyone said it was coincidence. I knew better. I was just too scared to speak. Mrs. Patterson, please, Blackwell began. I'm not finished. She looked around the church. How many of you have lost something to this man? How many of you have been threatened, cheated, stolen from? How many of you have stayed quiet because you were afraid? Silence. Then another woman stood. Then a man. Then another. One by one, people rose to their feet. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to show that Blackwell's grip on this town was finally cracking. This is absurd. Blackwell's voice had lost its smoothness. You're all being manipulated by a hysterical widow and her. I saw them. A young man pushed forward from the crowd. Caleb recognized him. Marcus Webb, one of the miners who'd survived the collapse. I was in that tunnel the day before it fell. I told Crane the supports were cracked. Told him we needed to shore them up before anyone went in. He said Mr. Blackwell wanted production increased, not decreased. Said if I didn't like it, I could find another job. That's a lie. 14 men died, Mr. Blackwell. I crawled over their bodies to get out. I still hear them screaming in my sleep. Marcus's voice broke. And you're standing there in your fancy coat calling their widows liars? The crowd surged forward. Caleb saw Crane's hand move toward his gun and stepped between him and the mob. Easy, he said quietly. This doesn't have to get violent. It already has. Crane's eyes were wild. You think you've won? You ain't won nothing. Mr. Blackwell owns this town, owns the law. By tomorrow, all these brave folks will be back in line and you'll be... A commotion at the church doors cut him off. Everyone turned. Deputy Jesse Cole stood in the doorway, snow dusting his shoulders. Behind him stood a man in a federal marshal's uniform. Nobody move. The marshal's voice carried the weight of federal authority. Ezra Blackwell, you're under arrest for criminal negligence, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. Blackwell's face went white. This is outrageous. You have no jurisdiction. I have all the jurisdiction I need. The marshal held up a document. Warrant signed by the territorial governor himself. We've been building a case against you for 3 years, Blackwell. All we needed was the final piece. He looked at Cole, who stepped forward, Daniel's journal in his hands. I wrote all night, Cole said to Caleb. Made it to Helena by dawn. The marshal was already saddling his horse by the time I finished talking. You traitor. Blackwell's composure finally cracked. I'll have you killed. I'll have your whole family. You'll have nothing. The marshal's voice was ice. Your assets are frozen. Your men are being rounded up as we speak. It's over, Blackwell. You're finished." Crane made his move. His gun was halfway out of its holster when Caleb's fist connected with his jaw. The bigger man staggered back, crashed into a pew, and went down hard. His gun skittered across the floor. The other hired men looked at each other, at the crowd pressing in around them, at the federal marshal with his hand on his weapon. One by one, they raised their hands. "Take them all." The marshal gestured to his deputies. "We'll sort out who's guilty of what back in Helena." Blackwell struggled as they put irons on his wrists. "You can't do this. I built this town. I own this town." "You don't own anything anymore." Abigail stepped forward, looking into the eyes of the man who had killed her husband, stolen her home, tried to destroy her family. "My husband's name was Daniel Thornton. He was a good man, a brave man, and you murdered him for profit." Blackwell stared at her with pure hatred. "You'll regret this, all of you. I have friends in high places. Your friends abandoned you the moment they saw which way the wind was blowing." The marshal pulled him toward the door. "They're already falling over themselves to cooperate. Funny how quick loyalty disappears when prison time is on the table." They dragged Blackwell out into the snow. The crowd followed, pouring out of the church, watching as the man who had terrorized them for years was loaded into a prison wagon like common cargo. Caleb stood on the church steps, Abigail beside him, watching justice finally being done. "It's over," she breathed. "Not quite." He took her hand. "But the worst is past." Samuel pushed through the crowd, baby Grace in his arms, the other children trailing behind him like ducklings. "Mama, did you see them take him away?" "I saw baby." "Pa would have been so proud of you." Samuel's voice cracked. "He would have been so proud." Abigail knelt, pulling all her children into her arms at once. Tears streamed down her face, the first she'd allowed herself to shed since this all began. "He would have been proud of all of us," she whispered. "Every single one." Caleb stood apart, giving them their moment. Doc Wallace appeared at his elbow. "You did it. We all did it. Couldn't have happened without you, without May, without Cole risking his life." "True," Wallace smiled. "But you lit the match. You gave people the courage to speak." Mei Chen was next, pressing his hand between both of hers. "Mr. Mercer, what you do today, my husband would be proud. I am proud." "May." "No." She shook her head. "No modest words. You accept the thanks. You earned it." One by one, townspeople approached. Some apologized for turning away. Others thanked him for what he'd done. A few just clasped his hand in silence, no words needed. Mrs. Hutchkins was among the last. "Mr. Mercer?" Her voice was stiff with embarrassment. "I owe you an apology. I judged you and Mrs. Thornton unfairly." "Water under the bridge, ma'am." "No." She shook her head. "It's not. I was cruel because it was easier than being brave. I won't forget that." She hesitated. "If there's anything I can do, anything at all." "There might be something." Caleb looked toward Abigail, still surrounded by her children. "Mrs. Thornton's going to need help, building a new life here. The children will need clothes schooling, a community to belong to." "She'll have it. I'll make sure of it." After the crowd dispersed, after the marshal rode away with his prisoners, after the town began the slow process of returning to normal, Caleb found himself alone with Abigail. The children had been taken to May's house to warm up and eat. For the first time in days, there was silence. Peace. "I don't know what to say." Abigail stood beside him, looking at the empty street. "It doesn't feel real. After everything, it's real." He turned to face her. "It's all real. Blackwell will stand trial. The families will get justice. Your husband's name will be cleared. And us." Her eyes met his. "What happens to us?" Caleb had been asking himself the same question. For days now, he'd been fighting to protect her, to save the children, to bring down Blackwell. Now that the fight was over, what remained? I meant what I said before. His voice was rough. About wanting you to stay. For the winter. For good. Abigail's breath caught. Caleb. I know it's too soon. I know your husband's only been gone 8 months. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. He took her hands in his. But I want you to know that there's a place for you here. For you and the children. For as long as you want it. Her eyes searched his face. You'd take on 7 children. A widow with nothing to her name. I'd take on 100 children if they came with you. She laughed despite herself. A surprised, tearful sound that broke something open between them. That might be excessive. Probably. He smiled. But I'm an excessive kind of man. I noticed. She stepped closer. Their breath mingled in the cold air. Samuel asked me something, she said quietly. About you. About us. I know. He asked me too. And what did you tell him? That it was too soon, that his mother had just lost his father, that marriage wasn't something you do to stop people from talking. Caleb paused. But I've spent 7 years alone. 7 years watching life happen to other people while I sat in an empty house waiting for something that was never coming back. He lifted her hand, pressed it to his chest. When I found you on that roadside, something woke up in me. Something I thought had died with my family. Tears spilled down Abigail's cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. I loved Daniel, she whispered. I loved him with everything I had. I know. But he's gone, and the children need a father, and I... She stopped, gathered herself. I need someone too. Someone who sees me as more than a burden to be managed. Someone who fights for me, not despite me. You found him. She looked up at him, this man who had walked into her life like a storm and refused to leave. Then ask me properly. Caleb's heart stopped, started again. Now. Unless you want to wait another 7 years. He dropped to one knee in the snow, took her hands in his. Abigail Thornton. I don't have much to offer. My barn's a pile of ash. My horses are dead. Half the town still thinks I'm a troublemaker, and the other half is only starting to change their minds. He swallowed. But I've got a house that's waiting to be filled, a heart that's waiting to be healed, and a lifetime of love I've been storing up with nobody to give it to. She was crying freely now. So was he. Will you marry me? The word came out like a prayer. Yes. She pulled him to his feet and into her arms. He held her there in the empty street in the cold afternoon light, while the town that had tried to destroy them watched from windows and doorways. Let them watch. Let them see what happens when 2 broken people choose each other instead of despair. The children came running from May's house, alerted by some mysterious child radar that something important was happening. They swarmed around Caleb and Abigail, shouting questions, demanding explanations. Are you going to be our new papa? Rosie asked, tugging at Caleb's coat. He knelt to her level. Would you like that? She considered the question with 5-year-old solemnity. You saved us from the cold, and you let me keep your coat, and you have horses. She nodded. Yes, I would like that. What about the rest of you? Samuel stepped forward, his face serious. You kept your word, protected our family when everyone else turned away. Pa always said a man's worth is in his word. He extended his hand. Welcome to the family, sir. Caleb shook it gravely. Thank you, son. One by one, the other children added their approval. Thomas, who had stopped being afraid of everything. The twins chattering in their private language. Lucy already planning where everyone would sleep. Even baby Grace, who grabbed Caleb's finger and wouldn't let go. Looks like it's official, Abigail said, laughing through her tears. Looks like it is. They walked back to the ranch together, all 9 of them, the children running ahead, Caleb and Abigail following hand in hand. The burned ruins of the barn stood stark against the snow, a reminder of everything they'd survived. We'll rebuild, Caleb said. Yes. Bigger than before, with room for more horses, more cattle, more children if God wills it. Abigail squeezed his hand. One step at a time, Mr. Mercer. Mrs. Mercer, he corrected. Soon enough. Not yet. But she was smiling. Not yet. That night, after the children were asleep, Caleb sat on the porch with Abigail beside him. The stars were brilliant, overhead cold and distant and beautiful. We were going to sleep under those stars, Abigail said quietly. That night you found us. I told the children it would be an adventure. I remember. I was lying. I thought we were going to die. I thought... She stopped, breathed. I thought God had finally given up on us. Caleb pulled her closer. Turns out he was just getting started. She rested her head on his shoulder. I don't know what comes next. I don't know if the trial will go smoothly, or if Blackwell has more tricks up his sleeve, or if the town will really accept us. Does it matter? What do you mean? Caleb looked out at the darkness at the ranch that had been his prison and was now his home. A month ago, I had everything figured out. I knew exactly how the rest of my life would go. Alone in that house, slowly getting older, waiting to die. He turned to look at her. Then you came along. You and 7 children who eat everything in sight and never stop asking questions. She laughed softly. My whole life changed in one night. Nothing is the same anymore. Nothing will ever be the same. He took her hand. And I wouldn't have it any other way. She lifted her face to his. Their lips met soft and warm in the cold night. Neither would I, she whispered. From inside the house, a child's voice called out, Rosie wanting water, wanting comfort, wanting the reassurance that the world was still safe. Abigail stood. I should go. We should go. She looked at him, smiled. We should go. Together they walked inside to tend to their family. 3 weeks passed like a healing wound. Slow at first, then faster, until one morning, Caleb woke and realized the weight on his chest had finally lifted. The trial date arrived with the first thaw of spring. You don't have to go. Caleb stood by the door watching Abigail button her coat with trembling fingers. They have enough witnesses without you. I have to. She met his eyes. For Daniel. For all of them. The children were staying with Mei Chen. Too young to witness what would happen in that courtroom. Too innocent to hear the details of how their father died. Samuel had argued, of course. I'm old enough. I should be there. Being old enough doesn't mean you have to, Abigail told him. Some things once seen can't be unseen. Let me carry this burden for you. But Mama, I need you here, protecting your brothers and sisters. That's your job today. She cupped his face in her hands. Can you do that for me? Samuel's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Now Caleb drove the wagon toward Helena Abigail, silent beside him. The road was muddy with melting snow, the wheels sucking at the earth with every turn. What are you thinking? He asked. About the last time I saw Daniel alive. Her voice was distant. He kissed me goodbye that morning. Said he'd be home for supper. Said he had something important to tell me. Did you ever find out what it was? No. She pulled her shawl tighter. I've spent 8 months wondering. Now I think maybe I'll finally know. Helena was crowded. Word of Blackwell's trial had spread across the territory, drawing reporters, lawyers, curiosity seekers from 3 states. The courthouse steps were packed with bodies pressing forward, craning to see. Marshal Thompson met them at a side entrance. Mrs. Thornton, Mr. Mercer, this way. He led them through back corridors to a small room where Doc Wallace waited along with Jesse Cole and half a dozen others who would testify. How are you feeling? Wallace asked Abigail. Terrified. Good. That means you're taking it seriously. Cole approached Caleb, his face drawn. I got word this morning. Blackwell's lawyers are going to try to discredit the journal. Say it's a forgery. Can they prove that? No, but they don't have to prove it. They just have to create enough doubt. Cole lowered his voice. There's something else. One of his lawyers approached me last night, offered me $10,000 to change my testimony. Caleb's blood ran cold. What did you tell him? What do you think I told him? Cole's eyes hardened. I told him to go to hell. But Caleb, if they're offering me that kind of money, they're desperate. Desperate men do desperate things. Stay close to Abigail, both of you. I don't trust Blackwell not to try something even from behind bars. The courtroom was packed to overflowing. Caleb and Abigail took seats near the front behind the prosecutor's table. Across the aisle, Blackwell's supporters filled the opposite benches: businessmen, politicians, the wealthy elite who had profited from his corruption. Then Blackwell himself was brought in. He looked diminished. 3 weeks in a cell had stripped away the polish. His hair was unkempt, his clothes wrinkled, his eyes burning with impotent rage. But when those eyes found Abigail, they blazed with something darker. You, he mouthed across the courtroom. You did this. Abigail didn't flinch. She stared back at him, her face carved from stone. All rise. The Honorable Judge Harrison Wright presiding. The trial began. Hours of testimony. Miners describing conditions in the tunnel. Engineers explaining how the supports had been deliberately weakened. Accountants tracing the money saved by cutting corners, money that had gone directly into Blackwell's pocket. Then came the families. One by one, the widows of the 14 dead men took the stand. They spoke of husbands who had kissed them goodbye and never came home. Of children who cried for fathers who would never return. Of lives destroyed by one man's greed. By the third widow, half the courtroom was in tears. Then it was Abigail's turn. The prosecution calls Abigail Thornton. Caleb squeezed her hand. You can do this. I know. She rose, smoothed her skirt, and walked to the witness stand with her head held high. The prosecutor was gentle, guiding her through the story she'd told so many times. Daniel's warnings, the pressure from management, the morning he left and never came back. Then he produced the journal. Mrs. Thornton, can you identify this? It's my husband's journal. He wrote in it every night after work. And can you read the entry dated October 15th, 1883? Abigail's hands trembled as she took the journal. She found the page cleared her throat. Blackwell himself came to the mine. Never seen him down there before. Told me the east tunnel would be worked by end of week or I'd be replaced. Told him I'd go to the authorities. He laughed. Said he was the authorities. The courtroom erupted. Judge Wright pounded his gavel. Order, I will have order. When silence returned, the prosecutor continued. Mrs. Thornton, what happened 4 days after this entry was written? The tunnel collapsed. Abigail's voice cracked. 14 men died, including my husband. Thank you, Mrs. Thornton. No further questions. Blackwell's lawyer rose. A smooth man in an expensive suit, his smile sharp as broken glass. Mrs. Thornton, you claim this journal was written by your husband, but isn't it true that you yourself are literate, that you could have written these entries at any time? Objection. The prosecutor was on his feet. I'll allow it, Judge Wright said. The witness may answer. Abigail's chin lifted. I could have, but I didn't. How can we be sure your husband is conveniently dead, unable to confirm or deny your claims? My husband's handwriting has been verified by 3 separate experts. Experts can be wrong, or bought. The lawyer circled closer. Isn't it true, Mrs. Thornton, that you've been living with another man these past months? A man named Caleb Mercer. Objection relevance. Goes to character, Your Honor. I'll allow it, briefly. The lawyer smiled. Please answer the question, Mrs. Thornton. Abigail's face had gone pale, but her voice remained steady. I've been staying at Mr. Mercer's ranch, yes. He took me and my children in when we had nowhere else to go. How convenient, a wealthy widow and a bachelor rancher. The lawyer's voice dripped with insinuation. Some might say you have motivation to fabricate evidence, to frame Mr. Blackwell in exchange for security. That's a lie. Is it? You stand to gain considerably from Mr. Blackwell's conviction. Compensation for your husband's death. The sympathy of the community. A new husband who... Enough. Judge Wright's voice cut through the courtroom. Mr. Caldwell, you will confine yourself to relevant questions, or I will hold you in contempt. Of course, Your Honor. But the damage was done. Doubt had been planted. The lawyer turned back to Abigail. One final question, Mrs. Thornton. If your husband was so certain the mine was dangerous, why did he go in? Why didn't he simply quit? Abigail stared at him. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice was clear. Because he was responsible for 13 other men. Men with families, with children. He couldn't abandon them. She looked across the courtroom at Blackwell. My husband died because he wouldn't leave others to face danger alone. He died because he believed that doing right mattered more than staying safe. He died a hero. And you... Her voice broke, then steadied. You're trying to make him a villain to save a murderer. The courtroom exploded. This time, Judge Wright let it go. Caleb was on his feet the moment she stepped down from the stand. She collapsed against him, sobbing, her strength finally giving way. You did it, he whispered. You did it. It's not over. The hard part is... The trial continued for 2 more days. More witnesses, more evidence, more desperate attacks from Blackwell's lawyers that grew weaker with each passing hour. On the 3rd day, the jury retired to deliberate. Caleb and Abigail waited in the small room with the other witnesses. Hours passed. No word. What's taking so long? Cole paced by the window. It should be obvious. The evidence is overwhelming. Blackwell has friends on that jury, Wallace said grimly. At least 2 that we know of. They might be holding out. For what? A deadlock. A mistrial. That would give Blackwell's lawyers time to regroup. Maybe intimidate more witnesses. Abigail's face had gone gray. You mean this might all be for nothing? I'm saying it's possible. Caleb took her hand. It won't come to that. How do you know? Because we didn't come this far to lose. He squeezed her fingers. Have faith. Another hour passed. Then the door opened. The jury's back. They filed into the courtroom. Caleb's heart pounded as he watched the jurors take their seats, searching their faces for some sign of which way the wind had blown. Nothing. They might have been carved from wood. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Wright asked. The foreman stood. An older man, weathered face, calloused hands. A miner himself, Caleb realized. One of the few who'd survived the collapse. We have your honor. On the charge of criminal negligence resulting in death, how do you find guilty? A gasp ran through the courtroom. On the charge of fraud and embezzlement, how do you find guilty? On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find... The foreman looked directly at Blackwell. His voice rang out clear and strong. Guilty. Chaos erupted. People shouting, crying, embracing. Blackwell's supporters fled for the exits, while the widows of the dead miners clutched each other, weeping with relief. Blackwell himself had gone white. He turned to his lawyers, mouth moving, but no sound came out. For the first time in his life, Ezra Blackwell had nothing to say. Order. Judge Wright pounded his gavel. I will have order in this court. Slowly the noise subsided. Ezra Blackwell, you have been found guilty on all charges. It is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to 25 years of hard labor at the Territorial Prison. May God have mercy on your soul. Guards moved forward. Blackwell struggled as they took his arms. This isn't over, he screamed. I'll appeal. I'll... Get him out of here. They dragged him away, still shouting, his voice fading as the doors closed behind him. Silence fell. Then Abigail spoke so quietly that only Caleb could hear. "It's over." He pulled her into his arms. "It's over." Around them, people celebrated, miners slapping each other on the back, widows embracing, reporters scribbling furiously in their notebooks. But Caleb saw none of it. He saw only Abigail, this woman who had walked through fire and come out stronger, who had faced down a monster and won. "Let's go home," he said. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, let's go home." The children were waiting when they arrived. May had given up trying to contain them hours ago. They spilled out of her shop the moment the wagon appeared, running toward their mother with shrieks of joy. "Mama, Mama!" Abigail jumped down before the wagon fully stopped, gathering as many children as she could into her arms. "We won, babies. We won." "The bad man's going to jail," Rosie asked, her face pressed against her mother's shoulder. "The bad man's going to jail. For a very long time." Samuel held back, watching. Caleb dismounted and walked to him. "You should be with your family." "I am." The boy's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You're my family now too, aren't you?" Caleb's throat tightened. "If you'll have me." Samuel extended his hand. Caleb took it. Then the boy stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Caleb's waist, holding on like he'd never let go. "Thank you," Samuel whispered, "for everything." Caleb held him close. "Thank your mother. She's the brave one. You're both brave." Samuel pulled back, wiping his eyes. "Pa would have been proud." "I hope so, son. I hope so." The wedding was set for the following Saturday. Too soon. "Mrs. Hutchkins clucked. "People will talk." "Let them talk," Abigail replied. "I've spent enough of my life worrying about what people think. I'm done." Mei Chen offered to make the dress. "Traditional American," she promised. "Simple, but beautiful." Doc Wallace volunteered to give Abigail away. "Since your father's not here, and I'm the closest thing to family you've got in this town, I'd be honored." The church was packed. Every seat filled, people standing along the walls. Even those who had once shunned Abigail came to witness the union, some out of guilt, others out of genuine happiness, all of them curious to see how this story would end. Caleb stood at the altar, heart pounding. He wore his best suit, the one he'd bought for his first wedding all those years ago. It still fit somehow, a small miracle. Then the doors opened. Abigail walked down the aisle on Doc Wallace's arm. She wore white, simple and elegant, her red hair gleaming in the light from the windows. Behind her, the 7 children followed like a flock of angels. The girls in matching dresses May had sewn overnight. The boys in borrowed suits that didn't quite fit. But Caleb saw none of that. He saw only her. This woman who had stumbled into his life on a frozen November night. Who had challenged him, changed him, saved him in ways he was only beginning to understand. She reached the altar. Wallace placed her hand in Caleb's and stepped back. "You ready?" she whispered. "I've been ready for 7 years." Reverend Shaw cleared his throat. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Caleb Mercer and Abigail Thornton in holy matrimony." The words washed over Caleb like warm water. He heard them without really listening, too focused on Abigail's eyes, on the slight tremble of her hands in his, on the reality that this was actually happening. "Do you, Caleb Mercer, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do." "And do you, Abigail Thornton, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Her voice rang out clear and strong. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Shaw smiled. "You may kiss the bride." Caleb pulled her close. Their lips met, and the church erupted in cheers. When they finally broke apart, Rosie was tugging at his coat. "Does this mean you're our papa now?" Caleb knelt, bringing himself to her level. "If you want me to be." "I do." She threw her arms around his neck. "I love you, Papa." Something broke inside him. Something that had been frozen for 7 years, locked away behind walls of grief and guilt. "I love you too, sweetheart." One by one, the other children joined the embrace. Even Samuel, who hung back at first, eventually moved forward and wrapped his arms around the whole group. "Welcome to the family, Pa." They walked out of the church together, all 9 of them, into the bright spring sunshine. People threw rice and cheered. Someone had brought a fiddle and music filled the air. "Mrs. Mercer." Caleb helped Abigail into the wagon. "I like the sound of that." "So do I." She settled onto the seat, arranging her skirts. "So do I." The reception was held at Mei Chen's laundry, the only space big enough for all the guests. Food appeared from everywhere, donated by townspeople who had once turned their backs, but now wanted to be part of the celebration. Mrs. Hutchkins brought her famous apple pie. The surviving miners presented Caleb and Abigail with a quilt made from scraps of their dead comrades' clothes, a memorial, and a gift wrapped into one. "For the children," Marcus Webb explained, his voice rough. "So they never forget where they came from." Abigail clutched the quilt to her chest, tears streaming down her face. "I'll never forget. None of us will." As the sun set, Caleb found himself standing apart from the celebration, watching his new family. Abigail was dancing with Lucy, both of them laughing. Samuel had recruited the twins for some elaborate game that involved a lot of running and shouting. Thomas had finally conquered his fear and was petting May's cat without flinching. Rosie sat in Doc Wallace's lap, listening to stories about his time as a battlefield surgeon. And baby Grace, little Grace who never cried, was sleeping peacefully in a basket by the fire, dreaming whatever babies dream about. "You look happy." Caleb turned. Jesse Cole stood beside him, a cup of punch in his hand. "I am." The words felt strange on his tongue. "I didn't think I'd ever say that again." "You earned it." Cole took a sip of punch. "We all did." "What will you do now with Blackwell gone? This town's going to need honest law." "Sheriff positions open." Cole smiled slightly. "Some people have been encouraging me to run." "You should." "Maybe I will." He looked at Caleb. "What about you? What happens next?" Caleb considered the question. For so long he hadn't thought about the future. Had lived day to day, hour to hour, just trying to survive the emptiness. Now the emptiness was gone, replaced by something he'd thought he'd never have again. "I'm going to rebuild my barn," he said. "Get some new horses. Expand the herd." He paused. "Samuel wants to learn ranching. Figures he's old enough to start pulling his weight. 8 years old and already working. That's the frontier for you." "That's my son, Yi." The word still felt new, wonderful, and terrifying at the same time. "Your son." Cole nodded. "I like the sound of that." Night fell. The guests departed one by one, pressing gifts into Caleb and Abigail's hands, wishing them well. Finally, only family remained. May insisted on cleaning up. "You take children home. This is your wedding night." "May, I can't let you." "You can, and you will." The tiny woman shooed them toward the door. "Go. Be happy. You deserve it." They loaded the children into the wagon, most of them already half asleep. The ride home was quiet, peaceful, filled with the sounds of breathing and the creak of wheels on the muddy road. The ranch house glowed in the moonlight. Caleb had left a lamp burning in the window, an old habit that had taken on new meaning. A beacon. A promise. A home. He carried the sleeping children inside one by one, tucking them into beds that finally had owners. Abigail followed, adjusting blankets, pressing kisses to foreheads, whispering goodnights. When the last child was settled, they stood together in the hallway, the house breathing around them. "Well?" Abigail's voice was soft. Here we are? Here we are? She took his hand. Show me our room. He led her to the master bedroom, a room he'd avoided for years too full of memories. But tonight it felt different. New curtains hung in the windows put up that morning by May. Fresh flowers sat on the dresser, a gift from Mrs. Hutchkins. The bed had been made with the quilt from the miners, its patchwork colors bright against the white sheets. It's beautiful, Abigail breathed. It's home. She turned to face him. In the lamplight, she was radiant. Not just beautiful, although she was that too, but alive, hopeful, free. I never thought I'd feel this way again, she said. After Daniel died, I thought that part of my life was over. The part that could love, could hope, could imagine a future. And now I have everything. She stepped closer. A home, a family, a man who fought for me when the whole world turned away. I'd fight for you again, 1,000 times. I know. She rose on her toes, pressed her lips to his. That's why I love you. The words hung in the air between them. Neither had said them before, not out loud. I love you too. Caleb's voice was rough, more than I knew I could love anyone again. She smiled. Then stop talking and show me. He did. Later, much later, they lay together in the darkness. Abigail's head rested on his chest, her breathing slow and peaceful. Caleb. Thank you. For what? For stopping that night, when you heard me telling the children we'd sleep under the stars. Her voice trembled. You could have kept writing. Anyone else would have. No one else would have. Not anyone worth knowing. You really believe that? He stroked her hair, remembering. The frozen night. Her voice bright and desperate, lying to protect her children. The moment he'd known he couldn't ride past. I believe that people are capable of tremendous good when given the chance. Most folks just need someone to show them how. And you showed them. We showed them, together. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Now sleep, Mrs. Mercer. Tomorrow we start building our new life. She snuggled closer. Our new life. I like the sound of that. Within minutes, she was asleep. Caleb lay awake a while longer, listening to the sounds of his house. Children breathing in nearby rooms, wind whispering through the walls. The settling of timbers that had stood for 15 years and would stand for 15 more. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the losses, the loneliness, the years of wondering why he was still alive when everyone he'd loved was gone. Now he knew. He'd been waiting for a frozen night in November, waiting for a voice in the darkness, waiting for a woman with 7 children and a fire that wouldn't die. Waiting for this moment. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in 7 years, Caleb Mercer slept without dreaming of the dead. Dawn broke clear and cold. Spring was coming, but winter wasn't done yet. Caleb rose early, careful not to wake Abigail. He dressed quietly and slipped outside to tend the surviving horse, to survey the ruins of his barn, to plan the work ahead. Samuel found him there, already dressed, ready to help. "Pa." The word still sent a jolt through Caleb's heart. "Morning, son. Can I help?" "You sure it's hard work?" "I'm sure." Samuel squared his shoulders. "Pa taught me that a man earns his place in the world. I want to earn mine." Caleb handed him a shovel. They worked side by side as the sun rose higher, clearing debris, salvaging what could be salvaged, planning where the new barn would stand. Abigail appeared on the porch, baby Grace in her arms, the other children spilling out around her like water from a cup. "Breakfast in 10 minutes, she called. "We'll be there." Samuel straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. "Pa." "Yeah." "You think he's watching my real pa?" Caleb looked at this boy who had been through so much, who had grown up too fast and still managed to keep his heart intact. "I think he's watching, and I think he's proud." Samuel nodded slowly. I think so too. They walked toward the house together, toward the smell of breakfast and the sound of children laughing. Toward Abigail standing on the porch, the morning light turning her hair to fire. Toward home. Caleb stopped at the bottom of the steps, looked up at his wife, at his children, at the life he'd never dared to dream could be his. What are you waiting for? Abigail asked, smiling. Nothing. He climbed the steps, pulled her into his arms, kissed her thoroughly, while the children made faces and giggled. Not anymore. They went inside together. The door closed behind them. And in the window, the lamp burned on a beacon in the darkness, a promise kept, a family made whole. Some people are broken by tragedy. Others are forged by it. Caleb Mercer and Abigail Thornton had been forged, and nothing, not time, not distance, not all the cruelty the world could offer, would ever break them apart.